Hello gamers, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Checklist, where your list is my command. I'm Savage Brewski. This is episode 3 of Checklist, and I've got the Civil War matchup for you today. That's right, I'm doing two lists, one Cygnar and one Khador, so we're going to dive right into these. So, first list is from Pablo Kraus, and I ran into him on Facebook. He gave me a list. This is 75 points Khador, Jaws of the Wolf theme. That's the Warjack based theme, obviously. What does that get you? Your jacks get Pathfinder, so they can basically move more easily through terrain. The thing I found with this list is some of the jacks he picked already have that. Oh well, that's easily overlooked. The other thing is, you get trees. That's right. Green Thumb, you get trees. Fan of Treebeard and the Ensign, Lord of the Rings, you get trees. So it doesn't matter if you're in a city, or in the depths of a cave, or in Earth, or you've been transported to space, or whatever your gaming scape is, you get a 5-inch area of effect forest terrain piece. You can stick it anywhere within 18 inches of your back end of the table. Aren't you lucky? Free trees. Okay, good. So, here's the list. He's got Butcher 1. For his battle group, he's taking Ruin, a Rager, a Devastator, a Marauder, and a Kodiak. And sticking with theme, he's only got Manhunter models, Widowmakers, and Kyazi units. So this is an interesting infantry list in terms of what it's actually bringing. He's got Yuri the Axe, 2 Manhunters, a Widowmaker Marksman, Kyazi Eliminators, and Widowmaker Scouts, Kyazi Assassins with the Underboss, and a unit of Battle Mechanics. Good old wrench boys. Okay, good. So, diving right into the list then. Here's what we're working with. We've got Butcher 1. He is your bread and butter melee and jack caster. Most people I talk to that play Khador love using Butcher. People that play against Khador hate using Butcher. Make of that what you will. His feat in his control range, friendly models get additional attack damage dice to anything. That's pretty standard. He's just buffing your attack. He's got very unassuming weapons, except he names his axe Lola. Special kind of guy. All right, so spells. This is where we get good. So he's got full throttle. Full throttle, yo. He gonna be moving up in here. He gonna be the Fast and the Furious, except he Russian. I don't know how that fit. All right. Full throttle. Jacks in the battle group starting in his control range can run, charge, slam, or trample without spending focus, and they get boosted melee attack rolls. Not too bad. This basically means you're going to get to do all the juicy stuff in melee with your battle group jacks and smack people around. Fury, model or unit, gets +3 to melee damage rolls and gets -1 to their defense. Great way to up the damage, basically. Great way to do more damage, especially with the... There's only one really tough close combat unit here. You have a bunch of solos and small units, so really this is probably going to be put on the really, really tough jack or really, really tough unit, the Kyazi. Makes him a little more vulnerable, but that's going to be great for a turn when you really need that key damage. Iron Flesh. Friendly model unit gets +2 armor and doesn't take blast damage. If they're out of formation, they don't get the buff. Again, that's going to be the Kyazi. Obliteration. Offensive spell. Pretty standard. Vengeful. Friendly model gets Retaliatory Strike, which means if it gets smacked in melee, it hits right back if it's still alive. Overall, he's great in melee. He's got fun spells to buff up and back up the army. There's not so much here that I would expect from what he does, though. He doesn't have a he doesn't have anything that's really helping with hitting things. He doesn't have anything that's really helping with speed. Luckily, the theme and a lot of what his jacks have with Pathfinder make up for that. So that balances out. Butcher 1 is toolbox. He's really not too hard to use, so I don't think you're going to have a problem with that. Okay, down to the actual jacks. You're taking Ruin, which is Butcher's best buddy here. While he's bonded, he gets Boundless Charge while in the control range, so he can charge without spending focus and get +2 inches of movement in Pathfinder on the charge. Sacred Ward can't be targeted by spells. That's great if you have if you play against someone in your meta that loves chucking spells to take out jacks. They play Crix or they play Cygnar, any of those kind of heavy Ret even. Those guys can be heavy spell against jacks, so that's going to be really useful. Soul Taker. This guy collects souls, which is usually a Crick specialty, and he can use those. Hold up to 5 of them, and 1 soul basically turns into a focus. Very handy. Arcane Vortex cancels out spells targeting it or a model within 3 inches. So if you have other valuable stuff you want to kind of protect, keep them close to ruin while you move up. It'll make it a little bit easier and more survivable for them to get there. Also, if the spells go off, in other words, someone targets them, it's kind of like they use the spell, but it's just wasting the focus to the Fury point. So you're going to be somewhat taking advantage of people if they don't know about that. But you want to win, eh? Weapons. He's a beat stick. He's got a good one. The Black Iron Mace dispels upkeeps and animize spells. That's going to be really handy if you want to debuff units. Basically charge him up, smack them, and they go kind of, vanilla. Okay, moving on to the Rager. I like this chassis. I got one of these and made a Berserker out of it. The Rager has the unstable Cortex, which makes them a little bit unpredictable. If you spend more than 1 focus with them, you have to roll a dice and they have a chance of blowing up at the end of that turn. So if you really want, this can become like a fire and forget, charge in, the hell with it kind of a missile. Gets into combat, does its attacks, spend a bunch of focus to either do rerolls or buy attacks or boost attacks, whatever you're going to do, and then potentially it blows up right in the enemy's face. So plus and minus depending on how you want to use it. This guy has Shield Guard, which is good. Butcher is a medium base model, so you want to be able to protect him. Shield Guard is one way to do that. Spells can buff it up in melee. Obviously you can cast Fury on this. Full Throttle will get it into close combat faster if you're going to do that. Pretty much, yeah. Devastator is, you got 2 of these basically, a Devastator and your Devastator and your Marauder. These are both pushers. They both have abilities that will push models around in combat. So this is kind of your combat manipulator rather than a straight up beat stick. The Devastator is interesting in that it has this steady and sturdy rule. Can't be pushed, can't be knocked down. The Armored Shell, it has to headbutt, slam, or trample, or the armor actually drops. It actually has higher armor if it's only doing those kind of attacks. So it can be kind of pricey in terms of how you're going at it, but that's helpful in keeping it alive while still doing damage. It can push models in base-to-base contact, obviously. It's got an area effect. That's pretty good. Your Marauder is the other pusher. It's a little more offensive. It doesn't have the whole clamshell defensive buff, but it has combo smite, so it can slam models d6 inches away. The damage is actually pretty high. If I read this right, the power of the attack is equal to strength plus 2 times the power for normal damage. That's kind of handy. It's also a siege weapon, extra damage dice against huge base models. So if you have someone that likes to take Colossals or Gargantuans, this is one way to rob them of that advantage, if you can get it close enough. That's obviously going to be fun depending on what it is. Kodiak, I absolutely love the Border Jacks, the 5th Mountain Legion or whatever the heck it is, the Mobility Jacks. I honestly, because you're going so heavy on melee here, I probably would have taken the Growlar instead for the points, but your list, man. I'm not going to knock that choice. Heavy Boiler means he can get +2 movement when he's running. You, I believe, can stack that with Pathfinder or with Full Throttle. So this thing will be zipping up the field if you wanted to. Vent Steam, area of effect attack around it. If you get this thing stuck in with a bunch of infantry, you can Vent Steam and do some damage to them. It also provides cover, which is going to be handy for some of your units. I'll get into that, especially when I get to the mechanics, because I really am not sure how you're going to get use out of them if these guys are all charging up the field and the slow infantry units just kind of hanging around behind. But I'll get into that later. Chain attack. If the model hits in melee with both fists, they can make a headbutt or throw attack. Very fast, very simple, very versatile. So you've got a lot of melee focus with your jacks here. I could actually see you running these in like a blitzkrieg formation. Run them as a wall altogether. Set up 2-for-1 kind of attacks. That's what I think you could do here. Getting into the solos and the units, you've got Yuri the Axe. He's pretty straightforward. He advanced deploys. He's got tough. He's got Pathfinder. He's got stealth. These guys all have this wonderful package of abilities that makes them just able to move up and infiltrate, get really close, and smack people in face. Ignores forest for line of sight. Gives this to Cossite and Manhunters. You don't have any Cossite, so it's really only the other 2 Manhunters. Could capitalize on that more, but again, not a bad choice. Thresher attack clears up around the base. I think that 5-inch area of effect tree terrain is going to be really handy because of these rules. Okay, you're going to either want to put him behind it or in it or around it, give him some cover so he can basically launch right into something and do some work. You're also taking him free in the list, as you can see here, so he's a good choice for that. Your other two manhunters, they're beat sticks, and they get Yuri's Tree Walker ability, so they can all basically work kind of like a spaced out unit, go after a big infantry unit or some pricey targets in the back line. A lot of ways you can use them depending on where you put that forest, what other forests you have, and what you want to do with them. Retribution has a lot of solos, maybe you want to take those guys out. Menoth will tend to have some supporting units that are really squishy in the back, same kind of deal. Widowmaker Marksman, I love this guy. Sniper, so we can take out solos and key models at range. Marksman ability, choose the column or the branch for damage on jacks. You can pretty easily cripple something if you take out the cortex, or you're taking out its movement, or you take out an arm for a key weapon, depending on how you want to use it, but you're going to want that on anything. Swift Hunter, if it destroys a model with a basic range attack and it can advance up to 2 inches. I can see that as handy if you're hunting solos. You pretty much know you're going to kill them as long as they don't have multiple health boxes. That's a good way to, shoot and then pop back into cover, essentially, or get in a better position. His leadership ability bestows that to Widowmaker scouts. So that's going to be handy on the actual squad that you're taking. They get the same ability. You can basically do a shoot and pop back into cover kind of move. That's going to keep them a little more survivable. Kyazi Eliminators. This is a fun unit to me because there's only 2 models. You're almost running it like a mini squad. Very mobile, very hard to kill off. From what I can see, they do a lot of juicy things in terms of their damage. So there's a lot of rules to go over with these guys. Acrobatics, they ignore other models in their charges. Anatomical precision is probably why most people take them. If the melee damage isn't greater than the armor, it takes 1 damage anyway. Duelist, +2 defense against melee on them. Parry, no free strikes, again keeping them more survivable. Stealth, enough said. Gang, +2 to melee attack and damage when targeting a model in range of the other in the unit. There's only 2 of them. It's kind of impossible to screw that up unless you get slammed or knocked out of coherency, so watch that if you're around something that can do that damage. Sidestep, when it hits something, it can move up to 2 inches after the attack. That'll help in case you are getting slammed or moved. If you hit, you can move around. My notes on these literally say, run these little psycho women up and put them to work against small units or control or contest objectives. I think that's a good use for them. Don't get them overwhelmed. They can't take on, a full-size unit of assault infantry unless it's really squishy. You could pair them up. You could actually team them up with Yuri and the Manhunters, I could see, as a pretty good cohesive point. They're not going to get any particular buffs from him, but they're not going to suffer if he's there to back them up either. So it's just a good use of them. Okay, Widowmaker Scouts. I love, again, the snipers on this. They have marksmen, so they can choose the damage track. These guys plus your individual Widowmaker marksman. Great way to take out the cortex on a jack, like I said. The one thing I thought of with these, if you run this list and you find that you want more shooty than melee, because your solos, the Manhunters, Yuri, the Kyazi, if you find they're not powerful enough and you want to go more shooty because your battle group, your jacks are more melee, I would find a way to get Olgrim in this list because he can take advantage of the Widowmaker bits. Olgrim is a freaking riot, okay? He's just funny as hell to use, and I love the idea of an undead ghostly sniper coming up to just wreak havoc on the living. I think that's actually really cute and adds a lot of character to the army, but again, that's your choice. If you're more comfortable with melee and you can make this work, absolutely stick with it. Getting down to the Kyazi Assassins and the Underboss. These guys are fun. The boss is a tough leader, comes with a mini feat skills. His mini feat, kill stroke. Unit can backstab. If it's in the rear arc of a model, it gets extra dice on the attack and the damage rolls. The trick on that is going to be using, it's going to be getting around these things, okay? Duelist +2 defense against melee attack rolls on them. The unit has anatomical precision, 1 automatic damage if it doesn't exceed the armor. No tough rolls allowed, very handy. Gang, obviously it's a unit again. +2 to melee attack and damage when in range of somebody else attacking in the unit. The drawback I see to these guys, this is your big unit. Okay, if you need to take out infantry and you're not going to do it with jacks, this is the guy that has to do it. If you want to hold an objective, they can do it, but they die to blasts pretty easily. They're not all that tough in terms of range. They're not super survivable out in the open, so you still have to be careful with them. Again, take advantage of parry, get up in the enemy's butt, and then just backstab them. That's your best use of these guys. Be very strategic with their use. They're not just a beat stick unit. And then, last but not least, your battle mechanics, wrench boys. They repair stuff. That's really all they do. They're not super capable in melee. You're not going to use them for anything else. Maybe they can hold an objective if you've kept them safe enough. Here's where I come to that, okay? Going back to the idea of running all your jacks in a sort of formation, you're going to want to screen Butcher, and you can also use Shield Guard from the Rager with him, at least until you want to kill it off, if that's what you want to do with it. You can also run the battle mechanics behind your Kodiak and use the Vent Steam. Maybe he's not going to cover all of them, but that's one way to keep them survivable. And if you have that wall of jacks and they're sitting right behind it, potentially that's a way that they can move to whatever jack needs repairing. Okay, I don't see them earning their points unless you do that kind of a thing. You're not just going to move up your jacks and have them sit in the back doing nothing. You're going to lose something before they actually get useful if you do it that way. If they're just there to score objectives or hold something, totally fine. I just think it's not going to be very useful. It's not making up their points very much. But I think you know that going in as it is. So there's your list. Overall, like I said, very much melee oriented with the jacks and the units. I think it's got some good tough jacks here. Shooty lists may give you some trouble if they're strategic enough. I think in melee you stand a very good chance of out meleeing another army that's built for close in. I think you're going to have trouble, honestly, if you're playing against an infantry list. If you play against something like Gravediggers or Defenders of Ios or Dawn Guard Sentinel armies, if you play against a lot of trolls, I think these guys are going to outdo your infantry. And then your jacks just aren't going to be able to take on enough. They're going to get stuck in and get stuck fighting one thing and then slowly get enveloped. So that's what I would watch out for. But overall, I think it's a solid list. I don't really think you're wasting a lot of things. I don't think there's a lot of loss here. I think you take advantage of things and the cohesion is really nice. So it's a good list. Play it, feel it out. Again, if you feel you need more shooty, I would just change something out. Maybe drop a Manhunter. I didn't figure with all the if-then kind of point situations, but if you can find a way to get Olgrim in there or take another unit of Widowmaker Scouts, that'll help quite a bit. Still stick with the theme. Maybe even lose the mechanics. I don't know. If you don't find that you get enough use out of them, maybe it's worth just getting something else that's more offensive. Maybe even more units, like Cossite maybe. You can take advantage of the wood terrain that way. But again, not a bad list at all. Just feel it out, see if it works for you and your style. That's about all I can say on that one. Okay, and the second list comes from Michael Gray on YouTube. And Michael, you had two lists. You basically gave me a bunch of models and said, what can I do with these? And you had Cygnar and you had Circle Orberus. I'm just doing Cygnar this time. I will circle around to your Circle Orberus, so don't worry, I'll get to them in a future video. All right, so you wanted a Cygnar Brawl list. This is what I put together, and I kind of went with an option on this. It's an either or. I didn't see in your list that you have the Trencher Infantry command attachment, the officer and the sniper. If you do, you can do this. If not, it's not too hard to get. If you use that, then you're basically going to have a Trencher theme list, and you can add even more things depending on what else you can fit points-wise. But this is what I came up with. Okay, so you're going to take Siege 1. Brisbane 1, in other words. You're going to go with a Squire, an Avenger, a Defender, a unit of Rangers, and a minimum unit of Trencher Infantry. The interchangeable here is the Squire for the Trencher command attachment if you have it. Okay? I'm still going to go over both units and tell you kind of how they work, what they do, so don't worry about that. But I wasn't sure. I didn't want to give you something you couldn't use either way. So here you go. All right, so getting right into it. I left this out of theme, by the way. I just wrote this as a straight Cygnar list, 25 points. Just leave it at that. If you go Trencher, if you go for Gravediggers, that's something I wanted to do. Honestly, I love the concept of trencher lists. I like their models. I like their infantry. I like the idea of a World War I sort of guerrilla force that can dig in and take a lot of damage and shoot the hell out of people. And I like infantry lists. It's probably the 40k player in me, but whatever. Siege 1, Feat, Breach. Remove wall templates in his control range, and if enemy models take damage rolls in Siege's range, have the base armor when figuring out damage. So you're going to do extra damage. You're going to remove any cover. It's a good debuff to them in whatever turn you want. If you have somebody that is digging in, if you're playing against a very similar list, goodbye advantage. Rules and weapons. He's tough. He's got combat engineer. Extra damage roll against structures. I don't know how many there actually are. Versus like a trencher blockhouse, which makes no sense, or slaughterhouse maybe. I don't know how many structures there really are. I guess some things like the Arcantric Force Generator or Well of Orberus. I just haven't looked into it. I don't know if all these count, but otherwise useful. Weapon, rocket cannon. He's got a sniper missile. It can also use a star attack called Ground Pounder. It turns it into an area of effect, ignoring stealth and concealment. That's good if you want to break guys out of cover or you're trying to debuff them defensively and just take out numbers. The normal attack can be used against jacks and do a good amount of damage. In melee, it's got magical and critical smite. The model can be slammed away, so if you're trying to just do some serious damage and get someone away from you, that'll work. Spells. I'm going to be honest, I don't love Siege 1's spell list. It seems a little scattered to me. He's got Explosivo. You target someone and their weapons gain magical. If that ranged attack boxes a model, then the model blows up instead of just dying. Force Hammer, non-corporeal model is slammed if hit. If you're running up against something that's ghostly or non-corporeal, if you're fighting Cricks and they've got a bunch of ghostly models, this is going to help against those, but it's a ranged spell basically that goes against these units. If the whole army is, it's not going to be as useful by itself, but better than nothing. Again, brawl list, 25 points. You probably won't be running into too many, so I think that'll be fine. Foxhole, make a 5-inch AoE in the caster's control range. Models within that have cover, don't take blast damage. Defensive, again, if you want to set something up, move it forward, set that up, keep it alive longer, whatever. Probably good on the Rangers, honestly. Unless if they're too far up, that might not work, but otherwise, Rangers. Mage Sight, drop a 5-inch area of effect in your control range. Models in that in Siege's battle group ignore forest and cloud effects in the line of sight, and they ignore stealth. If you have something that is hard to target, hard to see, it's in cover or whatever, that's going to make it easier for your battle group to shoot. And both these jacks have guns that you're going to want to use. So there you go. And Rift, area of effect creates rough terrain for 1 round. This is going to help you to dictate where the enemy isn't going to go. You're going to make it harder for them to move through, charge through, especially because you only have 2 units here. It's a small kind of game. That could be killer. You can keep people off objectives, keep them from charging you. Very handy. Okay, if you took the Squire, little R2-D2 for the caster, he's basically helping in terms of magical ability. So he's got Arcane Realignment, rerolls for failed magic attacks, 1 roll per turn only. Arcane Repeater within 5 inches of the caster. Give him control range extension of 2 inches, so if you're trying to cast something further out, that'll help. Reserve Accumulator. It gives extra focus points to the caster 3 times per game, 1 per turn. That can be handy if you're trying to do a lot in a single turn. Maybe on feat turn. Handy. Doesn't have some of the abilities that I otherwise would expect, but I think you're going to get more out of Siege if you take that guy. So, between that and the command attachment for the trenchers, plus minus really, whatever you want to do. Okay, down to the jacks. The Avenger has got a seismic cannon. That's an area of effect shot. On a direct hit, it knocks models down. That's killer in Brawl. If you're knocking models down, they're easy to hit. I can see your trenchers and rangers just lighting up a unit at that point. Pair that with the rangers actually using their marked target ability, and you're going to have an easier time actually getting that direct hit. That's going to be handy. But the problem then is the rangers have to be really close. They're kind of squishy, so decide if you want to make them your sacrificial pawn to use that gun or not. Stunblade, hitting a warjack makes them stationary for 1 round. Holy crap, you're going to do some serious damage if you can pull that one off. The Defender, Heavy barrel, it's a range gun, high power, no area of effect. It's basically a sniper shot. You're going to want to take out jacks and beasts with that. Very simple. Shock hammer, power and strength 17, that's really not bad. 1 cortex damage with each hit. So you're potentially going to render warjacks unable to really boost up at some point if you can get that in close. Again, using both of these guns, you're going to be able to take out quite a bit, I think. Especially if you're knocking down jacks, you're just going to make them easier to hit one way or the other. Siege using Mage Sight is going to make it easier to use that to shoot things. Again, mark target will help to hit things. Explosivo, I'm not sure. I didn't actually note down if you can use that on jacks, but could be handy. Rangers, these are your stealthy snipers. They have advanced deployment and Pathfinder. They mark targets. So while they're in formation, other friendly models get +2 to range attacks against enemies within 5 inches. So again, if they're there basically designating the target, other models in your army are going to be having an easier time shooting them. Prowl, while they're concealed, they get stealth. Very handy to keep them alive. They're very simple, very cut and dry. That's what they do. Okay, trencher infantry. So this is a minimum unit, so it's not going to be big. It's not going to be amazingly tough, but it has a lot of good abilities that can help keep it survivable. Advanced deployment. It's got assault, so it can basically, when it charges, it will shoot immediately before hitting. It's got the bayonets also, which do brutal charge, +2 charge attack damage rolls. So you want these guys to be the first into assault. You basically want to move them up, want to get them close, maybe with the advanced deployment. Declare charge, shoot, do damage, get extra damage on the charge. If done well, they can seriously do some damage to a unit or a jack or whatever. Otherwise, they have tough, they have dig in. They can basically get cover and no blast damage. They can use smoke bombs. I like this for the screening approach. You could potentially use this to screen on your first turn, keep your army pretty safe. They throw a bomb, 3-inch area of effect around the models. Okay, so you're basically just lining up your guys and they all just smoke. Combined range attack, if you run up against something that's more jack heavy, you're going to want to use this to take out the tough targets. If you're playing against, say, Khador using Man-O-War, even though they're not going to have many, you're going to want to use that. I already went over brutal charge. If you take the command attachment for these instead of using the squire, okay, if you're going to buff the unit instead of buffing your caster, which I could see you doing. Siege is not that impressive in terms of his magic. He doesn't necessarily need the squire with what it actually does. It helps him, but it's not so killer to me. I don't know, that just doesn't stand out. If you have it or can get it, I would almost say the command attachment for the trenchers works just because it gives them more numbers and the abilities. Cautious advance, they can move and then dig in and then shoot. So essentially this is your alternative turn 1 move. Dig in, so they're actually getting cover and no blast damage, and then make shots so they can basically set up, be defensive, and still shoot. They have a mini feat into the breach. They do a press forward order, then they actually use smoke bombs. This is a better way to go about that if you're going to. Your turn 1 setup, they move super far forward, get into a good position, smoke bombs, ready to do some damage next turn. The command attachment, in terms of the weapon, it gives you sniper. Again, you're going to be doing extra damage. You can choose to make 1 point of damage instead of rolling for damage. Handy if you're just trying to whittle something down to kill a solo. But they're trenchers as well, so they're not amazingly stat-like. At Brawl, I'm not super worried about this list being overwhelmed. You've got 2 good-sized jacks that are going to do a good chunk of damage if you can use them correctly. They've got really good guns and really good special effects on their weapons. Overall, I think either way you do it, run up or use the trenchers to do smoke bomb to screen your army and get them in a good position. Use feet to essentially remove the defense from the enemy, make it easier to take them out, get an alpha strike charge, take advantage of the rangers. I think you're going to want to mark target with them, but you're also going to want to shoot with them, so try to keep them survivable. If you have forest, if you have cover, if you have something you can put them in, do so. That's going to make them more useful for longer in the game. That's going to make a big difference. Potentially they can also be pesky and control or deny. If they're that far forward, they can set up the control or deny and kind of force your opponent to go after them first to score points. which case the rest of the army has time bought to actually do more damage from range. That's kind of Cygnar's bread and butter anyway, so I think either way it's a good play. So, there's your list. Alright guys, as always, I really enjoy these. I'm getting a lot of good feedback. The channel, since I did the second checklist, actually took on, I think, 21 subscribers, so I really appreciate that, and it's a really well-noticed effect. If you have people that are new, that are just getting into Warmachine and Hordes, by all means, show them these videos. Let them know I'm open for lists. Leave me a comment with your lists or your models or what you want to see in future episodes. Leave a like. Give me a subscribe if you want to see more. Share with your friends. And I'll see you guys next time. Stay savage.